Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Transformation with Kyndle. Name may be subject to change. I've always had a hard time naming things, but I'm not going to let that hold me up. So, the impetus for starting this program comes out of the realization that we're living in extraordinary times. Times where the future is ripe with possibility for either the very beautiful and amazing or the very frightening. One might say these are transformative times. And if you consume media, you might notice that so much of what we're being bombarded with is fear-mongering and negativity. And also, the loudest voices seem to often be the ones that are the least worth paying attention to. So, this program seeks to counteract some of that negativity and give voice and light to those that spread positivity. And I also happen to know a plethora of amazing people that either have really fresh and inspiring perspectives and/or are doing really good work in the world. I would love to introduce you to some of those people and those ideas. We aim to educate, we aim to inspire, we aim to uplift, and to spur constructive conversation, a conversation that you can be a part of. We'll be covering topics including, but not limited to, the following.
Activism, aliens, animal liberation, astral projection, civil rights, conscious census decision-making, cryptocurrency, cultural exchange, DIY tech, dreams, education, environmentalism, feminism, free energy, futurism, gardening, gender, green tech, holistic health, human rights, intentional communication, law of attraction, love, lucid dream, meditation, mental health, mindfulness, music, nature, net neutrality, neuroscience, nutrition, open source, paganism, permaculture, politics, polyamory, privacy, psychedelics, renewable energy, evolution, self-sufficiency, positivity, shamanism, share economy, singularity, sound healing, spirituality, sustainability, transformation, UFOs, veganism.
Wow. Cool. So, thank you for tuning in, and let's get to our first interview. I hope you enjoy it. My guest today is a near and dear friend of mine, Maple, who is a pagan priestess and an animal rights activist. Welcome, Maple.
Thank you, Kyndle.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. I'd like to thank you for being brave enough to be my first guest.
You're welcome.
So let's begin by talking about your background in magic.
Okay, well, I guess I was interested in it from when I was very young. I was always curious about what the people of Europe were doing before Christianity appeared, because I know it didn't appear till 600 or 700 AD. And I was always interested in the concept of nature as a deity or as a spiritual force, and worshiping nature and the ancestors.
So how far back are we talking? When did you kind of first get intrigued by this idea of...
I don't exactly remember. It's just I remember growing up knowing that there were more than one deity that I could interact with. And also,
those were intriguing to you?
Yes, and also the concept of actually like creating ritual and spell casting as another way of prayer. I learned it was prayer but using objects, and I was really intrigued. I grew up Catholic, and I was really intrigued by the part that ritual plays in Catholicism in the Mass, and the use of like serving bread and wine to everyone. In most pagan traditions, we use like cakes and ale, but it's like this very similar thing.
Right. Well, if I understand correctly, a lot of Christian rituals are have their origins in pagan traditions.
I think so. Yeah. I think especially Catholicism, except that they've taken out the goddess aspect, which including her was a very important part of my development of realizing that I'm a pagan.
So when did you kind of first begin to realize that spellcasting was something that was available to you and that you could create your own rituals?
I think it was around age 20 or so. I started attending public rituals with different covens, and while I was doing that, I came across many. Some were based in like Welsh traditions, some were based in like Wicca from around the turn of the century that developed in England. And then I found a group. I went to a summer solstice ritual with a group called Reclaimining, and they were out of the San Francisco area originally, but they had existed for decades when I happened upon them. And I had also read a number of books that were written by people who were involved in the creating of Reclaiming Collective. And so now I'm really involved in Reclaiming, been to a couple of the camps, and one in Ontario and two in California, and just have been associating with this group off and on for 20 years.
So you began attending these reclaiming rituals, and now you are actually a priestess in reclaiming. Can you tell us a little bit about what does it mean to be a priestess?
Well, in reclaiming, we don't really have a hierarchy. I mean, we don't have a hierarchy.
Okay.
And of course, I can't speak for every single reclaiming community or member or participant because
of course you're speaking from your own experience.
Yes, we believe like we're each our own spiritual authority, but we don't have a ranking like other covens might. We believe that we're all co-creating the ritual as it happens. There's some of us who might plan ahead of time the things that will happen in the ritual or the intention. But
so is that sort of your role as a priestess, given that it's a co-creative experience, but you're kind of establishing the intention beforehand?
Yeah, sometimes, most of the time in the one that I'm in, we do. But I've been to reclaiming rituals where we just show up and we make it up as on the spot, like with all the priestesses present that will be attending.
So it's completely spontaneous.
Yes, some of them can be. Then some of them we set an intention and decide what's going to happen in the ritual itself. And yeah, but there's not one of us that's like the
head honcho.
Yeah, priestess or.
So there's no pope of paganism then.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now I really like the idea of kind of co-creative ritual and like the phrase you used, being your own spiritual authority. Because I think that's a really good attitude to have. So, did you always feel like it was kind of your right to forge your own spiritual path, or was that something that you hesitated with at first and that you had to be introduced to?
Oh, I had to learn it almost from the scratch because growing up in a practice that was mostly like top down, where we did have a pope and then bishops and priests and cardinals in there, and it was very much like we're just sitting there and listening to what they tell us. Whereas in not in Wicca and paganism, for some covenants, it's a lot different. It's consensus based, and I had to learn how to work in that kind of environment. I had to empower myself to really take on rules because I thought, I don't know if I have the right to, or if I'm stepping,
So there was sort of a process of self-empowerment and self-discovery as you came to this
over
practice.
the years. I mean, over the 20 years that I've been reclaiming, I've learned that we're all actively participating in the ritual, and we need everyone's heart and mind to be in it. It's not just like it's not an observatory practice. It's everyone's co-creating it, which adds to the magic of it or the sacredness, I think.
Absolutely. So maybe some of our audience is confused about exactly what paganism is. At its kind of core, can you describe what paganism is?
I think it's different for everyone, but for me, it's basically worshiping nature and an element of deity as a goddess, kind of acknowledging the feminine divine in everyone and the masculine divine. But I mean, the feminine divine, I feel like, has been excluded for centuries. It wasn't eliminated; it was just pushed underground. And now we're seeing a resurgence that people actually have a need to acknowledge the divine feminine as well as the divine masculine. Of course, it provides a balance, I feel.
It's interesting to think about the idea of the feminine divine and how it might have been excluded from modern day religions, especially the Abrahamic religions. Because if you go back and you look at the early Semitic religion that led to Judaism, which in turn led to Christianity, there were, in fact, different deities.
Right.
Which what we call Yahweh was one.
Yeah, Yahweh was one of a few, that we know of. Yeah.
And what were some of the others?
One, I believe, was called Baal. There was a goddess named Asherah who was the wife of Yahweh.
The wife of Yahweh. So
Yeah.
the wife of our modern day God.
Right. And she is still, her name appears in the Old Testament. I think the Torah, her name appears, but she's now, like, they named a tree after her. So I don't know the whole, like, background or anything, but I do know, there was, that Yahweh was, like, a god of war, much as, like, Mars is in the Roman pantheon. So
And what was Asherah's domain?
I think she was a goddess of love. I'm not sure, though.
And I think that you can actually still find references in the modern day Bible, kind of cryptic mentions of Asherah.
Yeah, and I think Baal as well.
Uh-huh,
And I think there was one called Nimrod, if I remember correctly. So, these were kind of eliminated for some reason or another. People decided to exclusively focus on Yahweh. And I mean, in Roman mythology, like in Roman times, when people worshipped a wide pantheon, there were people that would just focus on, like, Apollo, for instance, or Diana. They would just, like, do the cult of Apollo.
I think that when, the practice of worshiping a single deity while still acknowledging that other ones exist was called monotheism.
Oh, okay.
And originally there was the cult of Yahweh, which was a monolastic practice in that they acknowledged there were other deities in the pantheon, but there were devotees to Yahweh. But at some point along in history, some people got the very clever idea that they could just, in fact, say that Yahweh was the only deity. And it was really kind of a great way to win devotees, I think. Okay, so these neo-pagan groups, one of which you are very involved in, are kind of reclaiming history in a way.
Yeah, people ask me sometimes, what exactly are you reclaiming? And I say, well, ourselves mostly. Because, we're, about empowerment and change from within in order to affect the change that we want to see in the world, which is focused around social justice, feminism, and environmentalism.
Okay. Let's kind of explore what does a ritual, in your experience, actually entail?
Well, the first thing we usually decide on is the intent. So we create an intention, why we're going to meet, what we're there for. We usually welcome the directions, which is represented by different elements. So there's north, south, east, west, and center, and then there's also earth, water, fire, air, and spirit. And these are more like guardians, and we're just acknowledging them by representing them. We call them in.
What does that look like? Is it a chanting or dancing?
It could be a variety of things, and we usually have different priestesses assigned to certain quarters. Even though there's 5, we call them the quarters. And many Wiccan traditions do this, but I mean, it all takes various forms, how they go about it. But it just involves recognizing the directions of the world to make us feel like a sense of oneness, I guess. The elements is just acknowledging all the forces of life that help us live, that have brought us here today. We are all fire, air, water, spirit, and earth. We're made up of all these things. All these things are within us. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those things.
That's very beautiful. Okay, so you will call in the elements and call in deities. And what's kind of the heart of a ritual?
It could involve a lot of different things, different activities. It could involve questions or prompts, and then we talk amongst ourselves in small groups, or sometimes just involves doing a trance work, doing some meditation, doing what we call a journey, where we imagine in our mind that we're going somewhere and meeting with a particular deity or spirit, and
a trance journey, sort of.
Yeah. Our rituals that distinguish from other pagan traditions is that we do something called the spiral dance, which
Tell
is
us about that.
sort of like a dance done in a group or like it's done communally, where we circle around and weave and form a spiral with our bodies, which a spiral is like a never-ending form that's present in so many things in the universe,
Sure.
from galaxies,
Our
to
bodies as well.
shells. Yes, exactly. And we do this to connect with each other. We're holding hands as we go around, and it enables eye contact with each other. And as we're doing it, we're chanting usually, or there's drumming, and
So
we build this into a big collection of energy, which we try to use for the betterment of ourselves and for the world, or for some other intention that we're thinking of.
raising energy.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it feel like to participate in the spiral dance and in raising this energy?
For me, most of the time it feels amazing. I often feel like overwhelmed because everyone's participating. Excuse me, and everyone's heart is in it, so you really feel that connection. But there's times when I felt nothing. There's times when I felt, I don't know. There's times when I felt like so happy. There's times when I felt concerned. It's a variety. Most of the time I feel positive energy from myself and from everyone, and I really feel the energy building. This is a great feeling.
And does this feeling carry over into your life, when you go home the next day? And
Yeah, because I feel like our intention, whatever we're bringing to the ritual, whatever we're seeking from the ritual, when we feel the energy, it feels like that intention is sealed. It's like we're going to remember this long after the ritual is over, and it affects our lives on a deeply interpersonal level, and also helps us connect with each other.
So as far as the intention of a ritual, you mentioned healing, and just tell me more about like an intention you might set for a particular ritual.
Well, we try to connect with what's going on in the world in the present moment, in our part of the world, or around the world, what's going on in our communities and our lives that's calling to us. And we base our intention around what is most prevalent, I think, what things we want to work on or see for the next section of the year that we're celebrating.
So now, let me pivot a little. You are also an animal rights activist. So, is magic one way that you advocate on behalf of animals? Does this tie into your ritual life?
Yeah. Well, lately I've been including justice for animals in my personal rituals. And it's something that I know a lot of other people who are pagan identifying, whether they're reclaiming or not. It's something that I know a lot of people feel strongly about, that the way we're treating animals is atrocious, that we could change, that we have to change to stop wasting so many resources and to stop cruelty in general. And I think a lot of people are aware of the intersection of social justice and justice for animals. So sometimes I'll ask people, like if I'm at a ritual, or if I hear them say something about how they're seeking justice for animals, then we can work on our own, or sometimes in a ritual I'm thinking, awareness for animals. Yeah.
So there's something powerful about having a shared intention. Like when you see others that are also calling for healing and help for the animals, and you also have that intention, do you feel that they magnify each other?
Yeah, and it was brought up at the Animal Rights Conference I attended last year, where a group of us went aside and formed a circle, and we asked mostly for empowerment for ourselves to help bring awareness to different causes within the animal rights movement, and also the intersectionality of all social justice movements. I think that it should include animals. So it's just trying to raise awareness of animal liberation.
When did you first start to feel called to advocate on behalf of animals?
Well, I remember feeling a lot of concern when I was around 12, when my family and I went to a steakhouse, and I saw the placemat, and it had a picture of a cow with all the parts that were going to be divided, and it was the whole cow, but with slices in its body, and I just thought of how
kind
wasteful,
of labeled, like
like ribs, and I thought how like destructive it is to, like, first of all, breed and raise these large mammals so that we can eat them when we don't even need. And in fact, it's not even beneficial as much as a plant protein would be.
Health-wise?
Right. It's actually, detrimental to our earth and to our own health to eat these, to eat animals.
So seeing that image of the animal and then how it was divided or cut up literally to make different food.
That was the first time I remember being aware of, meat is from a living creature that wants to live.
So that helped you make the connection between the food stuff and the living animal, where it came from.
Because before I didn't really think about it too much. It's just food. So then I thought, there are people living as vegetarians and they're living fine. I mean, they're vegetarian because of maybe religious purposes or for their health. And so I had it in the back of my mind that people could live well without eating animals. So I thought, at that time, I was like, I'm going to investigate this more. I'm going to be a vegetarian. Unfortunately, it didn't last for too long. As a teenager, I went back and forth for years between being a vegetarian and not being one. And then I would say, I'm only going to eat animal products if it's served to me at someone's house, but I'm not going to purchase it on my own.
I think I had a similar phase as well.
There's different phases. It's a long growth. It's a long process to becoming vegan. I wasn't vegan until around 2008, was when I dropped dairy altogether, and letting go of eggs was
until when?
2008.
Okay.
That's when I stopped. I was already vegetarian, not eating meat and not using leather, and then a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, was telling me about the horrors of dairy and how it's exploitive to cows and their babies, and something hit home, and at that point I decided not to eat dairy anymore. But it took like a friend and like some teachers and some other activists to really get me thinking about like why dairy is not vegetarian.
Okay.
Or why it's not animal,
Why it's still contributing to the same industry, and it's still ultimately dairy cows become, are butchered themselves. And
to treat animals like they're property or machines. It's just, I decided to, that's kind of like the abolitionist thoughts of total liberation, which some people believe in animal welfare, which is just, keeping the animals confined, but making sure they're healthy and loved, but
so you feel that animal welfare is not enough. We specifically need to advocate on behalf of animal rights, not just animal welfare.
I'm more of I guess that would be called like animal liberation, because for instance, I don't think
animal liberation.
Because I there's a lot of things that animals are used for, and I just think that at this point I believe that they shouldn't be used at all for human purposes. I feel like it's totally unfair and unjust. So,
do you think?
But I didn't always know this either.
Well, some people might hear this and agree. Yes, we shouldn't subject animals to
our needs and wants.
Or to torturous conditions, but might still hold on to this idea that perhaps there is a way to use animal product without inflicting suffering on the animal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if they're property, that's abuse.
It's inherently abusive.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean, it's, we have pets, we have like animal companions. Are they confined? I still haven't discovered the answer. We try to give animals like the best life they can, but who knows what's best for them? Except them. It's really hard.
I suppose it's a little trickier with pets because they've been domesticated over a long period of time, and it's questionable if they could survive in the wild.
It's doubtful that they can survive in the wild.
But we certainly should probably stop breeding them because it's creating a business out of this. And
yeah, that's where the problem. I mean, puppy mills. This is where the problem lies.
Right.
I don't think there's harm in adopting pets from a shelter because they would just euthanize them. I mean, we're already overburdened with like pets that people have not taken responsibility for.
Yeah. Oh, it's
and
really,
I doubt they could survive in the wild just because of all the human dangers. I mean, because of cars. I mean, not to mention like there's natural dangers out there that would be killing them. But I mean, mostly I think human dangers.
Mm-hmm. On an up note, some cities are starting to pass ordinances which make it illegal to sell animals that were bred for sale in pet shops.
Right, because there's already so many animals already bred out there.
Shelters are overflowing, so why not just transport them into pet shops? And the person coming into the pet shop doesn't know any difference.
Right.
Whereas otherwise, they wouldn't have went to the shelter to adopt an animal.
Right.
So I think those sorts of solutions are heading in the right direction.
Too, yeah. I think that there's a lot of great changes happening in law that will benefit animals, which we should start giving a thought about. I mean, for too long, I think they've just been considered like objects or machines, and they're not. So we should treat them differently.
Mm-hmm. I love that you have 2 black cats, by the way, as a witch. Do you identify as a witch?
I think I identify more as a pagan and a neo-pagan.
But you're not offended by the term witch?
No, I just think there's, I don't know, there's some connotations there that I relate more to a pagan as a nature worshiper, whereas a witch, I think, for me, it implies like a lot of doing like spell work and ritual magic, and I'm more like my rituals are based around like worshipping of certain aspects of nature or deity.
That's a good distinction.
But it's not everyone's, definition or, I mean, people can identify as both or Wiccan and don't want to be witch or, pagan and not Wiccan, but so like I said, everyone's their own spiritual authority.
Right. Let me just go back to this idea of engaging in ritual with other people with a shared intention, because I think that this is really a powerful thing. I actually heard recently. Let me tell you about this. For those of us that are more left brain oriented, I think this is going to help tie people into the idea that magic is real and that this sort of intentional ritual, it's not just theatrics, it's not just to feel good about ourselves, but it couldn't actually be having some effect. So here's what's going on. There is a project called the Global Consciousness Project that you can Google and find. And basically, they have these random number generators that work using quantum physics. So they generate either a 0 or a 1 at basically statistically even odds. So it's like flipping a quantum coin. And now they've found that certain things can make these random number generators deviate from just 50-50 odds. Like they'll start getting a series of 0s in a row or a series of 1s in a row. And these deviations are virtually statistically impossible if it was just 50-50 chance. So, for instance, when different events around the world happen, like big important events, for instance, like the climate talks, or like the
9/11.
Boston or the 9/11 or the Boston Marathon bombings, they start getting huge deviations from randomness. So what that's showing right there is that human consciousness is having some sort of effect on the subatomic level that we don't quite understand, but is definitely there. And now now here's what's really interesting. They also brought these sensors to different spiritual groups when they were engaging in their rituals. And they found that just by being in the presence of where this intentional ritual was taking place, they would start getting huge deviations. And in fact, they found that pagan groups were some of the most effective at influencing these random machines. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, well, I feel like whenever we're in ritual and doing what we call, some magical work.
I just heard a beep. I
think it was your phone.
Oh, okay.
So when we're doing rituals, I really feel like we're shifting consciousness or invoking change somehow, and just from our center, like of our collective willpower or something.
So internal changes, but also external changes.
Yeah, I think there's a shift definitely in how people perceive things. I don't know. It can be, it can be like therapeutic. It can be healing, or it can be altering. It can be awareness creating. Because some people, sometimes when I leave a ritual, I'm like, wow, I wasn't aware of a certain thing before. Now I am. So, and I think somehow that spreads like to the rest of the world, even though no one else may know what's going on. There's definitely, I think, an energy release that I do think has an effect. Like
it's kind of like ripples in a pond. Yeah, that is very powerful. So maybe you can speak briefly about some of the challenges that you faced as either as an animal rights activist or as a practicing pagan.
There's a lot. I mean, where do you want me to start? Animal rights. Well, animal rights, I can tell you that the main issues we're dealing with right now in the animal rights movement is implementing anti-colonialism and anti-racism in the movement, because we've had like struggles with whether or not the animal rights movement is using. Sometimes, like, people will use, like, misogynist or, like, imperialist.
Cough, PETA.
Yeah. But, I mean, even though their intentions are good, whatever, it's, we still have to look at our, what's the, what's the levels of, like, human justice being avoided or something in the movement.
Because ultimately you seek to both uplift human beings and animals.
Right. I mean, we believe that there's a connection between the injustice faced by animals and injustice faced by humans, because how we treat animals shows how we treat the powerless, those without a voice.
I think that maybe a conflict arises because some people use language that has traditionally been associated with the human rights movements or the civil rights movement, and then maybe there is a perception that it is co-opting or that it's cheapening the experience.
Yeah, and I tend to not use words like I'll use like words like confinement to describe animals that are confined in factory farms, and not the word slaves, because I feel like that belongs to people who lived that experience or whose ancestors or who currently, there is human trafficking going on, and I don't want, so I use a different word for the animal rights activism.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
But not everyone agrees, and I know people of color who think whatever language we use is fine because as long as it gets the message out. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always like
So it's complex, and there are varying
complex
opinions on the
issues.
matter. Sure. I mean, I think
and
that
words, yeah.
we shouldn't get so bogged down in the language that it causes divisions, and we should seek, unity in our struggles.
Mm-hmm.
What other sort of challenges? We had one about animal rights. How about one about being a pagan?
I think there's just like misunderstandings about what pagans actually do or what we believe, and how we differ from like mainstream like monotheism.
Okay, so just a lot of misconceptions out there. People that think that you're like raising demons and stuff like that.
Right, or I've had a lot like people assume that there's like this promiscuity just because we're sex positive. So we think of pleasure as a sacred thing. All needs are sacred, and this can be misconstrued as like that we have
all needs
that we have no boundaries or something. But the opposite is true. We look really like hard.
Yeah.
We want,
well, what if somebody hears that and they think, well, what if I feel the need to murder people, or
Well, it's not construed like like that. But I mean, it gets misconstrued because in, like, say, Gnosticism, whereas pleasure is, and all things, related to sex are considered going against God or removing yourself from God. We actually feel, it can bring you closer to the divine. But, we still recognize the need for boundaries and try to respect each other's sacredness and
yeah, so it takes some mindfulness to navigate those waters. Thanks for sharing that. So do you have any advice for floundering pagans or animal rights activists that are maybe in the phase that you were in a while ago, where you were just kind of hesitantly feeling it out?
I would say just do what feels right for you, and don't let anyone pressure you into feeling like you're not doing enough, or
to go at your own pace.
Yeah, but I would also recommend maybe walking the edge a little bit, your own edges.
Push your own boundaries.
Yeah, see what you're capable of. Just stick to what you believe and what you know in terms of animal rights. And I think that applies for being a pagan as well. Just follow what your intuition tells you, what your heart tells you.
Any final thoughts?
We'll just relay some of we're working on right now. This time is coming up on the summer solstice.
Oh, yeah.
We celebrate pretty much every 6 weeks. There's an event that happens.
So you have the
solar.
summer solstice, the winter solstice, the fall and spring equinox, and then you also have the median points between those.
Yeah. So there's 8 altogether.
And that's what we call the Wheel of the Year.
Wheel of the Year. So right now we're working towards summer solstice, and we're talking and thinking about how our passion fuels our service, and how our service ignites our passion, and it sort of feeds to one another. So that's just, I wish everyone to...
Can you say that one more time? Our passion feeds our service.
Our passion feeds our service, and our service feeds our passion.
Our service feeds our passions.
If we allow it, yeah.
That's good. Well, that's a good note to close on. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for being my guest and being brave enough to share your experience.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Pagan, and I'm proud. I am pagan, gonna shout it loud. I am pagan, want the world to know that I follow the goddess 'cause she rocks my soul. Don't need your Bible, I got the wisdom of the crone. Don't need no heaven into this life. she will.